Jacinda Ardern, she's in the Wellington studio with me. Good morning. Now, a big list of changes that have been announced. How are you going to achieve all of them?
Yeah, many of these items, of course, supplement the agenda that we have. So, of course, we've set out before the election our ambitious 100-day plan. That's first cab off the rank in terms of things we're rolling out. But once the Cabinet is sworn in tomorrow, I expect we'll be getting straight to work, particularly on some of those initiatives that focus on decent jobs and wages.
And what are your specific priorities?
The 100-day plan does still focus on things like getting in our families package, that first lift in the minimum wage, our investment in education, particularly around tertiary policy, and there's other long list of additional things like our commitment around Pike River.
To talk around minimum wage, it looks like you're kind of taking on business immediately with that one. Can small business particularly afford this rise?
Oh, look, I will be placing emphasis in my term in office around partnership. And this is a really good example of how I see that operating. Yes, we have flagged that over a number of years we intend to see the minimum wage rise. That's what we did when we were last in office, 9 increases in 9 years. But what we didn't announce yesterday is the other piece of work I will be looking to do. We do have a tax working group we'll be establishing. One of the things I will ask that working group to look at is, for instance, the way that Australia's stepped tax regime has operated. In Australia, of course, they have a slightly lower corporate tax rate for companies and businesses that have lower turnover. I'm interested in how we can ease the burden on small businesses in particular, because we are asking them to join with us in making sure workers are earning a decent wage in New Zealand.
But anything coming from the tax working group isn't going to be implemented this term, is that correct?
Look, that's as it relates more broadly. If we're looking to do something that would be of benefit, not to a cost, I imagine the business community wouldn't mind if we had that legislation ready to go. But that's something that I'll be working alongside them with.
Okay, just to be clear though, you are going to be raising the minimum wage up to $20 an hour by 2020, I think it is.
That's legislated by 2020, coming into force by April 2021.
Okay, but you're saying you may bring forward some information, some policy from the working group if that is something that will benefit business and make it easier for them.
I will be asking the tax working group to do a specific piece of work around ways that we can ease the burden on particularly our smaller businesses.
And would that be coming in essentially phased in to counteract the extra money that is going to be paid out in wages by some businesses?
I will be looking to ease the burden, but of course I haven't undertaken that work. We haven't convened the tax working group, but this is me foreshadowing that I do have a genuine interest in how we can support those who create jobs in New Zealand, and in large part our small to medium-sized enterprises. Well over 40% of our new jobs are coming from our SMEs. I want to do all I can to work in partnership with them.
Okay, the $1 billion Regional Development Fund, that's an annual amount of money. Where is that money coming from?
So when we went to the election, we had our fiscal plan set out that we had $10 billion of unallocated capital expenditure. So that is where this investment will be coming from. It will include investing in, for instance, regional rail. It will also include the money that we're putting towards our increase in forestry.
Okay, so that billion is coming from the 10 billion that you had going spare?
Indeed, because it is predominantly obviously capital expenditure.
Okay, so it's not that it's a headline figure that's already essentially budgeted for in separate areas that you're drawing together to one fund. It is extra money.
It's unallocated expenditure as we set out in our fiscal plan. But what that means, of course, is that we have been able to deliver both of these agreements while staying within our budget responsibility rules. That was important to Labor, and that's what we've delivered.
Some of the numbers that were missing were on immigration. Why no specific numbers yesterday?
The agreement referenced Labor's policy. Labor's policy has not changed.
So it's still 20 to 30,000 down on the current levels?
That's our best estimate of the impact our policy will have, yes.
Best estimate. What does that actually mean in practice?
As we've always stated, our focus hasn't been on the number, but on making sure our settings are correct.
Well, your focus has been on the number because the number's been out there, and that was talked about a lot with you and also with Andrew Little.
The number's out there because we're constantly asked, what's the impact of your policy? So, of course, when we undertake a policy development, we do look at the potential impact.
So you're not going to walk back that number?
No, that number has not changed because our policy hasn't changed. Again, it focused on making sure we lift the quality of export education and making sure that we're getting our labour market test right.
Okay, what about the ban on foreign home buyers? How are you going to implement that?
So, of course, that policy is one that's shared by both Labour and New Zealand First, and of course the Greens also sharing a great interest in easing the pressure on the housing market. We've always said that our view is that we need to stop those sales of existing homes to foreign buyers. I'm now in the process, now that I'm in the position to, of accessing advice from officials on how we can deliver that outcome.
So is that going to be along similar lines to the Australian setup where immigrants have to buy a new build?
Yes, we've always said, look, if someone's actually going to build a home, that helps our supply problem. It's always been about existing homes for Labour. That's always been where our focus is. And as I say, right now I'm looking at all of the options and how to make that policy a reality.
So that does that mean that there will be any restrictions around people coming into New Zealand to potentially buy property? It'll be fine as long as they build a new one.
It's building a home that adds to supply. We've always had that position.
Okay, what about the regional fuel tax for Auckland? Because, of course, that's an area where many of the people coming into the country do settle. Is that still standing?
The regional fuel tax, that policy has not changed. That was always about making sure that we had enough investment available to deliver on our ambitious plan for particularly public transport in Auckland.
So when is it going to come in?
That change requires a change to allow local government to enforce that change. Of course, we were only focused on Auckland being affected by that regional fuel tax. And when I sit down with officials, we'll be looking at the legislative program. But of course, the priority is our 100-day plan. Those are things that will be the first cab off the rank.
And it's not in your 100-day plan?
That element hasn't been in our 100-day plan, but it is a minor change. It won't take too much work.
Okay, are you wanting to bring that in this year, next year, when?
I currently haven't formulated a legislative program. We haven't yet been sworn in yet. So yes, we are moving as quickly as we can, but there are some things I can't give you a precise date on now.
Just finally, why does New Zealand First appear to have a disproportionate number of portfolios for its size and share of the vote?
I would argue that they don't. They take 4 seats in Cabinet and none outside. The Greens have 3 ministerial posts.
15 portfolios, though, for New Zealand First.
Oh, but not all portfolios are born equal. Of course, some are small. Issues like, not to diminish their importance, but portfolios like internal affairs are smaller, more discrete portfolios. What I focused in when I did the allocation was playing to the strengths of the ministers that we have. So with the Greens, of course, you'll see a strong environmental focus. With New Zealand First, you'll see a strong focus on regional development. That is a focus for them as a party, as it is for Labour. So that was my focus. In terms of positions, Labour has 21 ministerial posts. Our support parties have 7. I think that's fair and proportionate.
Thank you very much for your time. Jacinda Ardern there, the Prime Minister, at 25 minutes to 8.
And coming up on Morning Report before 8 o'clock, we get the opposition's view of the coalition deal. Steven Joyce will be in the studio with us. We look closer at the waka-jumping legislation. And China's ruling Communist Party elevates leader Xi Jinping to the status
50 in April, and by 2021 it'll be up to $20 an hour. First Union's Robert Reid told Morning Report he considers the increase a modest one, but it will help a lot of people. The Employers and Manufacturers Association's Kim Campbell told the programme while too many people are on the minimum wage, care is needed with the speed of increases to avoid an inflationary spiral. Mr Campbell says he doesn't buy into Winston Peters' view that New Zealand is in a dark economic place. Several workers at a construction site in the Auckland suburb of Albany received minor injuries this morning when part of the building collapsed. The police say they were sent to the building site on Don McKinnon Drive about 6 o'clock, where a section of the building's roof had come down. The High Court is set to release a judgment today in a copyright case between the rapper Eminem and the National Party. Eminem's music publisher 8 Mile Style sued National for breaching copyright by using music similar to Lose Yourself in its advertising during the 2014 election campaign. A Republican US Senator has unleashed a blistering attack on the President Donald Trump, with whom he has traded insults on Twitter. Bob Corker accused Mr Trump of lying in a series of television interviews and says the president has debased the US and weakened its global standing. Mr Trump fired back on Twitter, calling the top senator a lightweight who couldn't get re-elected. That's the news. Now the weather around the country today with Met Service. Kaitaia has a few morning showers, then mainly fine, 18 degrees. Whangarei mainly fine, cloudier this evening and 19. Auckland mainly fine apart from a few morning showers. Evening cloud, 17. Hamilton cloud at times, chance of a shower, 17. Tauranga, Whakatane and Rotorua, mostly sunny, cloud this evening. 19 the high for Tauranga, 20 for Whakatane, Rotorua 17. Gisborne and Napier fine and 21. Hastings sunny and 22. Taupo cloudy at times, 16. Taumarunui, New Plymouth and Palmerston North cloudy spells and could get a shower. Rain tonight, 16. Whanganui has the chance of a shower all day, rain at night, 17. Levin and Kapiti cloud from afternoon and then rain tonight. Levin 16, 17 degrees for Kapiti. Masterton blue skies and 20. Wellington fine but cloudier this evening, 17. Blenheim clouding over in the afternoon, could get evening rain, 22. Nelson cloud from afternoon and the chance of an evening shower or two, 19 degrees. Westport rain sets in this morning, might be heavy and thundery from evening, 15. Greymouth and Hokitika showers turning to rain by midday and sometimes heavy, 14. Kaikoura gets cloudier, rain from evening, 19. Christchurch more cloud and then rain sets in this afternoon, 20. Ashburton rain setting in around midday, 16 degrees. Timaru persistent rain by late morning, easing tonight though, 13. Oamaru, Wanaka, Alexandra, Queenstown and Dunedin, occasional rain, clearing sometime this evening. 11 the high for Oamaru, 16 for Wanaka, Queenstown and Alexandra 15, Dunedin 12. Invercargill rain at times, easing to a few showers this afternoon, also a high of 12. It's almost 20 to 8.
You're listening to Morning Report. The Labour leader Jacinda Ardern and her negotiating team conceded some big-ticket items to New Zealand First and the Greens to secure their support. And those concessions include a $1 billion a year regional development fund. Let's talk about this further with the National Finance spokesperson, Steven Joyce. He's in the Wellington studio. Good morning.
Morning, Susie. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Now, let's just firstly talk about your personal situation here. You're a senior National Party MP. Did you consider...
Thank you for caring.
Did you consider standing down when you realised you were going to be in opposition?
No, I thought about it for 5 minutes in terms of what I wanted to do and decided that for New Zealand's future and in terms of the debate, particularly on the economy and stuff, I had a contribution to make. And I look forward to making that over the next 3 years.
Because you're list only, you wouldn't have triggered a by-election by going, would you?
Well, that is true, but that's not the reason you choose these things. You have to decide in your own heart what it is you need to do. And from my perspective, New Zealand has been going very well. It's been making very good progress, and that's been beneficial for everybody in terms of jobs and steadily rising real incomes. And I don't want to see that disappear, so I want to have my contribution in keeping the new government to account on those things. OK,
let's talk about some of the announcements made yesterday. We just heard from the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, saying that regional development fund, $1 billion a year, is coming from the unallocated $10 billion that they had in their numbers. It all seems to be costed.
Yes, well, no. And in fact, she's going to have to be checked on that because the amount of money they have unallocated over the next 3 years is $4 billion. And that's according to their own numbers. And I know there's been a debate on these, but I have added them up this morning and checked them. And they have $4 billion, so they're proposing to allocate $3 billion of that to the Regional Development Fund. So you could say it's costed, but of course that would leave out things like biosecurity, research and development, free health checks for the over 65s, the extra police, the funding for biosecurity, all those things that are also apparently fully costed. So one of the things we'll all have to test is where this money is coming from.
So you've added up the numbers this morning and checked them, but why should we trust your maths when you said there was an $11.7 billion hole in the finances?
Well,
that was widely discredited.
Well, it was widely debated. All I can say is
it was widely discredited as well, to be fair.
No. Let's just see how that plays out. Because I don't want to be right, but I can tell you that they've just allocated the first $3 billion of their $4 billion over the next 3 years. And it's easy, just grab a calculator yourself and go and have a look. It's not hard. Don't listen to commentators, just go and exercise yourself. Here's the numbers actually, if you like. 913, 835, 879, 1,472. Those are the next 4 years unallocated money. You add them together, you get $4 billion.
$4 billion that they have sloshing around.
Well, it's not sloshing around, actually. And that was the debate during the election
But
campaign.
you were saying there was an $11 billion hole. So how can those two things both exist at the same time?
Because, Susie, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that isn't allocated in this. Look, we can play this game all day, and we will get to play it all the way through to the first budget next year. But Grant Robertson has a major problem. He's like the guy who's going away on holiday and trying to fit 3 suitcases worth of stuff into one suitcase. That's his problem. And it's not just that. It's really important for New Zealand. It's not about a he said, she said. I mean, I don't care whether I'm proven right or wrong. In fact, I'd rather be proven wrong, because then New Zealand's expenditure as a government would be under control. But sadly, I have a sneaking suspicion I might be proven right over time.
OK, so I guess time will tell
That's right.
on that one. But on the raise of the minimum wage, is that something that you're thinking that the government and business, particularly small business, can't afford?
Well, it's really hard for small businesses if you think about it in terms of running a small business. And effectively, the government of the day has just arrived and is telling you the wages of your lowest paid workers are going to go up 27% over the next 4 years. And this is in an inflationary environment of 1 to 1.5%, maybe 2%. That's a very big increase. And of course, that doesn't stop there, because it flows through into all the relativities of people higher up. So what that does is reduce their competitiveness, reduces their ability to hire people.
But Jacinda Ardern telling us this morning that this working group on tax that is going to be brought in, that's going to be looking at easing some of the tax burden that businesses have to deal with. And those changes could come in the first term. So these two things could cancel each other out.
Well, we'll wait and see again. But why doesn't she just stay with the lowest band income tax cuts between 14 and 22,000? If you really care about low-paid workers, that would give them immediately $11 a week from 1 April next year. They're about to change that in the Parliament and cancel those. And instead, they're going to place the burden on all the small business owners. They're basically saying, we won't keep our costs and expenditure under control, but you over there, you small businesses, you're going to get squeezed because we can't keep our costs under control. And that's the way they're starting off.
If I can ask you about something else just before you go. The judgment is this afternoon on the 8 Mile Style versus National Party court case. Just to remind people about this was the use of the Eminem-esque track by your campaign last election. I recall you saying at the time that it was pretty legal, the use of that. Are you still confident, or are your palms sweaty, Mr Joyce?
Well, palms certainly aren't sweaty. That was the advice we had at the time. It'll be a very interesting judgment this afternoon, because in effect, if it comes out on one side, which is on the side of the plaintiff, then it will have the effect of moving the copyright law in New Zealand in one particular way. Now, that's entirely for the judge to decide. But, the best advice we had at the time was that it was legal, otherwise we wouldn't have gone ahead with it. And the moment we learned about it was mitigating. But look, there's a judgment coming out this afternoon. We'll all find out then.
We will. Thank you very much for your time. That's Steven Joyce, National's finance spokesperson, 14 to 8.
One of the more idiosyncratic policy concessions New Zealand First has extracted from Labour is the reintroduction of so-called waka jump.